this is Dr. Katie from ScribeNote, and we're here for another episode of What's Up, Doc. Thanks for joining us. Today we have Dr. Greg Bishop with us. He is super interesting and very creative, and we're going to get into a little bit about him and some of the things that he's doing. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. For starting off, you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a small animal veterinarian. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I mostly do emergency relief for my clinical stuff. I do some general practice as well. I've been out from vet school for about 11 years, 12 years, 12 years this June. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I did a rotating internship, and then I've practiced in California and Oregon. But in the last couple of years, I've moved to relief work, mostly doing ER, and then I do a little teaching at the vet tech college that's local here. And then a lot of my time right now is spent on writing about veterinary medicine. I've got a web column for Veterinary Practice News on clinical communication, and then I'm also doing some illustrations and some cartoons about just the current state of veterinary medicine and some of the things that I'm seeing on the floor. And I do some speaking as well. So just a hodgepodge of things. I'm like a general practitioner for like non-clinical stuff too. So I kind of try to do everything like a good veterinarian
Yeah,
should,
yeah.
right?
You wear many hats and
Yes,
yeah, jack of all trades. That's a good thing.
yes. So many
Certainly.
hats.
Yeah. First, wanted to start off by saying, like the creative stuff is really super cool to me. I don't know if anyone has seen your website. I'm sure lots of people have, but anybody listening, Sasquatch Paw, has got some like satire, some really smart articles, really on the nose. I've read a couple recently. The one that stands out is the You Can Trust Your Vet, which, I think covers the common question we all get about, friends kind of contacting us with medical questions and things like that,
Yeah.
which happens all the time. And you referred to it as an experimental storytelling platform, which I think is great because blog just boxes it in too much,
Yeah.
doesn't give it its full creative license. So maybe tell us a bit about that and why you started it.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I hit this point where, I don't know if it was burnout or what it was, but it was basically like I just couldn't picture myself doing exactly the same thing for the next 20, 30 years or whatever my career was going to be. And I've always had this like a bubble of creative lava in me that had been coming out in certain ways. I'd been drawing cartoons forever, and I'd been illustrating some children's books at the time. But I thought like I gotta take this more seriously, almost like really intentionally try to become a professional at this. And I thought, as a storyteller, you got to write what you know, and you got to explore that. And I thought, well, I'm here in the clinic. I'm here a lot of times on the ER floor in these intense situations, seeing stuff with animals, but also really the human side of the ER is just so people get so personal.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I can turn this into something that is important to share. It's important to document. And I think there's a lot of my colleagues that are struggling, and a lot of the messaging that we're exposed to is either kind of from the corporate side, which tends to be like squeaky clean, la la la, here's a wellness program and like hooray, or from the academic side, which is like, you guys are all idiots, you should be like doing this and this and this and this. And I thought, like, we need more voices from the floor, from saying this is our experience, and not in a destructive way, but just in a like honest, authentic, representational way. So I thought, why don't I do that? So that's kind of been my aim with the website, is just putting stuff out there. And sometimes it's like completely bonkers ideas that I'm happy to I'm really not trying to force that on anything, but I just need to get it out. But yeah, the one that I wrote, by the way, You Can Totally Trust Your Vet. I get so many phone calls. We all do. We get phone calls, we get emails from friends. Hey, I went to the vet. They said X, Y, or Z. Like, does this look right? You get a picture of the estimate,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
dentistry, and you're like, is this right? And I just thought, like, I don't know any. I don't know anybody that I went to vet school with, anybody of my colleagues that I work with now. I know nobody that's in this in a corrupt way. Everyone is 100% dedicated to helping animals,
Yeah.
and like I should write something as a form response to these people. And and it was satirical and it was smarmy, and that's just my style.
I loved it.
But yeah,
Honestly, it was so good. I think like that's the one thing, like it'd be nice to be able to portray like our viewpoint to the clients and the customers of the world that are coming into the clinic because, we all wish, or at least I wish that money wasn't a huge part of it, right? Because it does make it super challenging, I'm sure, especially in ER. But yeah, it's just one of the things I think that adds to that like exhaustion on the day to day, right? The constant
yeah.
discussion about money and the constant distrust and all of that. And so you're totally right. We certainly need another voice.
Well, and I'm so drawn to language and communication. Like I started undergrad as a linguistics major, and
Yeah.
I love the, like, how do we take ideas that are in this population and get them over here, and you do it through language. Like at one point I was a field assistant in the Amazon jungle for a few months, and I worked with all these guys who spoke Quechua, like the language of the Inca, and I would just like sit with them and like write down all the words and like try to learn this language, because I just loved that there's like a whole richness of experience that you can have through language. And I think in veterinary medicine, we get confused because we're like, well, we're both speaking English, but we're not. We're speaking veterinary medicine, and our clients are speaking, normal human, and
Yeah.
we forget that there's a different way to translate, and there's different techniques, and there's different ways to do that. So yeah, I think like I kind of like the idea of mediating that conversation back and forth. Not only explaining to veterinarians, and I'll do speaking gig. I'll do CE talks where I'm like, hey, I'm trying to translate what's going on over here to you guys, but also, hey, you guys, here's what's going on with veterinarians right now, and what you should know. So
I totally agree. I think it's super important to have that like both perspectives, right? So
yeah,
being that mediator is really, really a unique way to come about like what you're doing. So really cool stuff. I'm looking forward to having a read through the rest of, some of the articles you have on there. You also have some of your art.
yeah,
I saw like New York Rejects or something. Maybe tell me about
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I've drawn cartoons for my whole life, as long as I can remember, and I've had every once in a while I'll do a series, and I've done different formats. But my neighbor right now he's a nuclear engineer, but on the side he draws cartoons for the New Yorker. New Yorker has these little single panel gag cartoons in it, and he was submitting for years, and then he finally got a few in, and I was talking to him, and I was just thinking, like, oh my gosh, I love that format and that idea. So I started drawing some, and there's actually a few different New Yorker cartoonists in Portland, and we would get together and hang out and just kind of like talk cartoons and the composition and the joke, and deconstruct them, and I loved it. So I started submitting, I guess a couple of years ago now. I have not had any accepted, but then at the same time I was like, well, what about these cartoons for a veterinary audience? This is like a cartoon is a little joke that you can, it only takes 5 seconds to look at and read, and that really lends itself well to the modern, low attention span environment online or whatever. So I pitched them to Veterinary Practice News, and I had a relationship with the editor, and she's like, "Yeah, sure, this is great." And it's, as far as I can tell, it's the only like veterinary cartoons that are out there being published like in the magazine formats. There's just been a lot of good feedback because for me, it's very personal that what I put into the cartoons. It's like, hey, I just had this crazy experience, doing CPR in this emergency situation, but there's kind of a funny aspect to it, and I'll draw a cartoon about it. And then, other people, other veterinarians or veterinary colleagues that have had that happen to them can kind of connect with that and can, hopefully find the humor in it. But the feedback's been really awesome. People have been really appreciative of having it. And I think if I can be grandiose from it, I do think it like enriches our culture of veterinary medicine. It gives us other stuff
Yeah.
than we're used to. And it's kind of the stuff I would want to see out there.
Not a lot of people bring laughter and like humor to like what can be a really dark profession, right? Like we deal with a lot of hard stuff, like hard conversations, like discussions about end of life, like cancer often, and just like the amount of things that can happen to pets, I'm sure in the ER, like, hit by cars, like all of that is just so heavy. And so
Yeah.
like that lightness, that laughter, like kind of putting a bit of a like a spin on it to look at it in a different way, I think is really refreshing.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the alternative? Just stay in the darkness, or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's definitely. I don't feel, when you're in vet school and you're with everybody and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a cardiologist or a neurologist, and it like to me, I was always like, I just don't feel smart enough or good enough to do any of those things. But I do have if I have any facility with anything, it's like it's this language and communication and creative side. And yeah, it just seemed like there was a need. It felt to me like there was genuinely a need for it.
mhm.
And that's probably just me internally talking myself into like, hey, it's probably worth spending time doing this. But it's been fun.
Yeah, I think communication is such a huge aspect of the profession, right? Like we cannot do our job without it. So you
Yeah.
have to be good at it. And if you can make it more relevant to the people you're talking to, like that I think just brings you way closer to like meeting people where they're at, right? And their understanding and their like experience and all of that. So I think like good for you. It's a really like refreshing, like I said, way to deal with the heaviness of this job. And we were kind of briefly chatting before we started about all the challenges with veterinary medicine, right? And you kind of want to reframe that and look at them as opportunities. So I guess I'm going to ask you a super vague question. What do you think is the biggest opportunity in the veterinary profession right now? Like kind of to change the way things are and move forward.
I honestly do think it's a matter of communication. There's so much sort of tragedy from miscommunications.
Mhm.
Whether it's like like clients being unsatisfied and being angry and being verbally abusive. Like I don't think that it's our responsibility to create, like, to make people act mature.
Agree.
And at the same time, I do think there's genuine communication skills that can help prevent a lot of that. Or with team members, like clear, like the amount of clear communication. If it was at 100%, I do think our profession would be in a much better place.
Mhm.
And that's never gonna happen 100%. But I think that it's a lot of I think it's really important, and it's not something that us as animal kids that grew up just like hoping we would be Doc McStuffins, like that we want to do. We don't want to spend more time talking to people or even like training in that, because it's not the fun part. But I think it really underpins so much, and especially as pets become more and more emotionally salient to people, like that is happening. French bulldogs are the most popular breed. Like we just want these little cute things in our house to feed our own ego, and we're more anxious and we're more sensitive. I think that the delicacy of communication is really, really important. So I think that, like, that's my bias. I do believe in that. It won't solve everything, but it'll just make teamwork so much better.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, everything is a collaboration. So if we like, you can have the most upset client in the world, and the case can be going poorly. but if you can get people on your side, then you can really like you can just practice better medicine. You can do more of what you want. So I think that's it. It's like how do we get these ideas transmitted fluidly to each other so that because everybody is here to help. Nobody's here to take advantage or to be a jerk. Nobody, like, people don't come into the vet clinic to be a jerk. They come in for help. They end up being a jerk in the vet clinic, but it's like they didn't I didn't get out of bed
Yeah.
like I'm going to go abuse my vet.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's such a charged environment, right? Like we're dealing with money, we're dealing with, stress and like maybe perception on the client's part that they like we're judging them for certain things or on how long they've waited or, on the way they take care of their dog, or cat or whatever. Like you said, the communication part, even though it takes longer, even though it makes the appointment like a lot more complex, and sometimes you end up going around in circles and like just trying to meet people like exactly where they are and at like the time they bring their dog or cat or whatever it is into
Yeah.
the office. I think it would make it a lot easier, but also I feel like the structure of like appointment workflows doesn't always set us up for that, right? So some of the
Yeah.
like corporate models that I've seen that are like, you've got your support staff going in to take a history, which is great, and the vet can be in the appointment room for 10 minutes and then they're out. But
Yeah.
really, like I think we need to come away from that and have it be more of like a team approach, but where they're getting the value for the amount of money they're spending on these appointments. We know like we have to pay our staff, but people are also paying us a ton of money, like they deserve the time, right?
Yeah.
And I find that the reason that I get most exhausted is because I take my full appointment time. This is how ScribeNote came to be. I just am always in the appointment discussing and teaching and going over things, and then I'm running to the next one. And it's just
Yeah.
like this like onslaught of never having any time to like breathe or go to the bathroom or drink
Yeah.
water, or you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I get it. It seems unsustainable sometimes. I just wish there's some way to like still make, a good profit for businesses, but also like be able to check off those boxes that people need for client experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Because historically we've been such a trusted profession, and now more and more it seems, I haven't seen like data on this, but it just seems like there's more complaining about vets, not being there or being, and the cost of care is, I didn't know this, in the last 2 decades, cost of veterinary care has gone up faster than inflation and faster than the cost of human health care. And it is like, these are normal people out there that want help. And, it's not art. Like, I don't think it's 99% of vets' fault that that's happened. It's like, there's reasons, but it's like this, yeah, of course that's going to manifest into being frustrated and venting. And it's like, we look at it like with animals that come into the clinic and are acting fear aggressive. It's really they're afraid, right? And they have this repertoire of behaviors that they do when they're afraid. And we don't judge the animals. It's not fun to deal with a 150-pound Cane Corso that has never been muzzle trained, and the owner's a moron who just thinks like the dog's fine. That's not fun. But we don't look at the dog and be like, this dog should have known better. And
Yeah.
with people, it's so easy to judge them because, like, I just use the word moron, right? And we got to remember that, like, everyone's coming from a different experience, and if we just open our mind and horizon a little bit, which is hard when we're feeling swamped and backed up and overwhelmed and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I do think this is sort of why we have so many of the problems that we have.
Mhm.
And, and then again, sometimes we're put in impossible situations. And for me, I'm like, well, the only thing I can do when everything sucks like this is just try to reframe at least a small part of it with a laugh, hopefully.
Yeah.
And that'll make it seem slightly easier for at least a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I there's this line, it's like tragedy plus time equals comedy. I
Yeah.
totally agree that that is true. But
Yeah.
I like that you reframe it. I think it's a good way to be. It certainly, I'm sure, helps with the some of the exhaustion and the the burden that we carry as veterinarians. Yeah, I it's like kind of a complex profession to explain to anyone. Like, if you were a kid and you wanted to do this, right? Like you said, like you just wanted to pet like cats and dogs all day and or, not really deal with people, but people are the biggest part of this profession. Right? They come with the credit
Yeah.
cards, they come with the leash, like, or the carrier, and they are the intermediary, right? And so if we can't
Yeah.
connect with them, I don't really know how far we're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my on top of my mind, I always think 80% of my job is just talking to other humans,
Hmm.
and I do get to, and the 20% is great and it's fun and it's amazing. And you just can't have it without the 80%. And so, why not try and make that better is, yeah, been at least the mentality.
Yeah, so you do the cartoons and the satire. Is there a different way that you go about your appointments at all? Like with your explanations, do you draw things for people, or like how do you like do like compare things to certain things? Like, yeah, tell me if there's any
Yeah.
differences there.
Definitely in the communication style. Like so I've been really curious about this. So I've been following the research on, there's like a kind of golden period right now of clinical communication research. So, Jason Coe is one of the people who does this, and Jane Shaw. I think they're both in Ontario,
Yeah, Jason
but they
Coe is out of
publish, yeah, they publish a lot of stuff about communication styles, and so I've been reading their textbook, and then writing these veterinary practice news articles about that too. So I actually use these techniques, like warning shots. I was talking to a colleague, a really experienced colleague who's a great communicator with clients, and I just mentioned warning shots, which is you're going to deliver bad news. You send a clear signal beforehand, hey, we're about to go into something hard. And he just didn't, he like wasn't familiar with the term. I'm like, well, I think you kind of subconsciously know what this is, but I actually really pay attention to that more so in communication now, and using humor too. Like I do think about humor in the appointment, in communication, as a tool. Like there's all these communication tools that we have. Warning shots a tool, humor is a tool, signposting is a tool, agenda setting. Like there's a whole sort of, it can be a really like beautiful part of clinical work is the client interaction, and you can take somebody that's really really elevated and like boom, get them back onto the team in a collaborative way. So I've been as I've been learning more about that, I've been more intentional into putting it into practice. And yeah, like I do, I'll be in conversation having a sort of meta awareness, like now's the time to get your warning shot ready, or hey, this might be a time where this joke might actually be helpful to kind of like lighten the mood. I always talk about euthanasia. I do so many euthanasias. I did this workshop on clinical humor, using humor in clinical settings, and was asking people like, do you ever make jokes during euthanasias? And the kind of prevailing mentality was that no, you don't do that. It's too sensitive, or it's not the right time. And my experience was actually like, if you're open to it and if you're at the right time, you can actually take somebody that's really really upset about losing their pet, but you can reframe a really important part of it, which is that they, a lot of times people come in thinking that their pet is going through the same thing they would, and fearing their mortality, like the pet is going thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. That's just not the case. The pet's experience is just going under anesthesia. So anyway, this is a long complicated way to explain it, but you know, most people I do think come in anthropomorphizing their animal in that moment.
for
And I
sure.
always sort of talk about like, this is really not what the animals just, they live in the moment. That's their job, is to be happy. We're doing this because they're not happy. And then I a lot of times I'll drop in this joke about how like the animal doesn't, the pet is not worried that they're never going to get to see Paris or something like that. And I would say like if I'm reading the client right and the moment is right and I deliver that, I would say like I get like 90% of the time genuine laughter from people, which like, can you imagine how powerful that is in that moment when they just went from like feeling so terrible to this light feeling of mirth, and reframing this horrible experience is actually a beautiful thing. It's like it's so powerful when it's in these moments. So I've been very intentional about that, and I've been like more and more convinced of the value of that.
Wow. Yeah, I could certainly see that being like a very unique like way to come about the euthanasia appointments. And yeah, I think reading the room is certainly important in those situations. Probably not for everyone. I'm sure you don't use it
Yeah,
in every appointment, but again, those really strong emotions, you're right, can have like can change pretty fast, like the line between like sorrow and laughter, right? Like so, I think when people are in that kind of state of mind, you have more of an opportunity to impact them. That's really beautiful. Like it sounds like a really like peaceful way to go through those appointments.
yeah.
And they
It's it's
are.
the
Yeah.
total value. It's the total like communication as a collaborative tool.
Yeah.
Like it's like watching a good surgeon just kind of fluidly move, and like they know it. And then when I do surgery, it's like, oh boy, like clamp that. Oh my god. Oh boy, that's that line. It's there's a clumsy way to do it that works, and that we struggle, like most of us I do think struggle through, and it takes a long time to get that fluidity. But boy, it's like it's amazing what you can do with just words
Yeah.
to other primates, other
For sure.
large bipedal primates.
What is that book called? I'm super interested to look into it.
The textbook, it's
Yeah.
gosh, hold on, I have it.
Okay.
It's never far from my side. It is Developing Communication Skills for Veterinary Practice.
Okay.
Jane Shaw and Jason Coe.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's totally readable. There's good examples in there, and yeah, it's like a thin textbook that I can't imagine too many people just buy for their own pleasure,
Yeah.
but it's so important. Like I think more and more I see the value.
For sure. So I went to the Ontario Vet College, is where Jason Coe teaches. And he was in our like while I was in school, he was teaching. So we used the Calgary Cambridge guide. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with that? Like some of the stuff you mentioned, like the agenda setting and all of that. It
yeah,
does become second nature. Like you said, you have to be intentional about it, but then it becomes like part of any workflow, right? Like you're just
yeah,
used to it. It's natural, right? You're trying to go through those steps, but you don't have to hit them all, right? It's
yeah,
one of those nuanced things, right? Communication is like different in every situation.
yeah,
Similar to our jobs, right? Like no day is the same. Every
yeah,
appointment is different, and you just have a lot of things to potentially have to deal with in a 8 to 12 hour to 16-hour day, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's funny how quickly you go from like you're in school and you're like, sweet, I did well on the test. I knew which multiple choice answer to get, and then you go into practice and you're like, wait, what? Like, what? There's no clear. Like, I have to make up some harebrained scheme because this situation just seems completely impossible. There was never like a question like this in school.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, you are like you're the doctor now. Like you
Yeah.
get to decide and come up with your best plan.
That's the craziest transition. So I graduated in 2016 and I do the same thing that you did. Like I don't know how many years I've been out of school. I kept saying 8 and then I was like, oh wait, I guess it's 9 this year. So it's just like the time goes really quick once you're out. of school. We always say once you're out, it sounds like, you were incarcerated or something, but
Yeah, yes.
kind of. But I mean, really, that transition is crazy. Like the amount of things that you have to like learn by trial by fire when you're a new grad it's insane. Like I think the communication part is a huge, but then nothing follows the textbook. You
Yeah,
you come into contact with so many different situations, and like there's nothing like that feeling that you're the final decision maker, right? The
yeah,
I've never had to final like decide and discuss these like ultimate choices with people before.
yeah,
Like even when you're
yeah,
in school, you do it, but it doesn't feel the same as when you do it when you're in practice, right? It's
yeah.
just such a crazy transition, and I remember it well.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, literally the power of life and death, and just the amount of self doubt and like imposter syndrome that it just seems like everybody I know in the profession has that to some degree, and yeah, it's psychologically it's a real it's a real I don't know gauntlet of
Journey.
horror
Yeah,
sometimes.
it really is. I agree. Like the whole profession is super complex, right? And it's because like you're just so many things to the people that are coming into the hospital, whether and obviously we're talking about clinical medicine. There are so many parts to all of it, but the clinical medicine, like because I can speak to it and so can you, the it's just like there are so many different facets to it, right? Like try to explain, that like try to explain what you do to a 5-year-old or something, that like that thing
Yeah, yeah,
that I don't know that I could. I don't know that you
yeah,
should like say, "Oh yeah, I get to see dogs and cats all day," because that's not really what it is. It's like
yeah,
I get to
yeah,
practice medicine on something that can't talk and has to be within a budget. It's super hard.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's just all these. It's funny. I just a couple of years ago I just done my like recover certification, and it's great and like really well done, and I'm glad that they did it. So in no way do I want to take anything away. But one of the things they say is you should go convey what's happening in CPR to your client in 90 seconds. I think it's 60 or 90 seconds. And I just finished that, and then I was working in ER, and I had this case come in coding that was like it was a 19-year-old cavalier in heart failure,
Oh,
and the owner wanted to do CPR, and I went up to go talk to her, and it's like, well, actually it's my son's dog, and I got to get him on the phone, and I'm like, in my mind I'm like 89, 88, 87. I'm like, this is impossible. It is literally impossible. I know the presentation of this in the video makes sense, and it's the proper way to teach it, and I'm experiencing the real world, which is so much crazier and so much more chaotic and so much more impossible. And it's just that like that belief that like, no, you are the captain of the ship, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like the video. It's gonna like there's nobody else here that is doing it, and it's just my own self belief that like I can be here, I can still talk to them, and I'm better than nothing right now. And I don't know, maybe that's a poor way to look at it, but it was enough to like help me get through it. And again, it's I'll close an incision, and I'm like, ooh, that looks kind of ugly. That's not as pretty as the textbook, but the incision's closed, and it's gonna hold, and it's gonna heal, and
yeah.
I don't need to beat myself up so much about it. I can just kind of be okay with it.
Yeah, and dogs don't go to beauty pageants. So,
Yeah,
and I always like, if they get a funny haircut, right? Like hair grows back, right? So
yeah,
just give yourself grace and like know that you are doing the best that you can with what you have. And I think that's like such a resounding thing that like you said, the imposter syndrome is so significant in this profession. It's just because there's so much to know, like so much to know about so many different things. And there's all the other factors as well, right? So just feels very overwhelming sometimes, and I can definitely understand that. But I really like the way that you look at it. It's that reframing and the changing your perspective of how you're looking at a situation. I think it's like super positive, and hopefully some of our listeners can get some help from that and maybe read that textbook. I might actually look in to see because I really love the communication part of this profession. I do love it. It does add a ton of time. Like,
Yeah.
it just you can't do it fast. You can't rush it. You got to give people the time
Yeah.
they need to understand stuff, and that becomes sometimes challenging. So, definitely
Yeah.
lots of things that I think they can take away from this discussion. And I can't wait to read more of your satire, your kind of edgy, relevant writing about the profession, because honestly, it's changing all the time, and like the community aspect of it, and like having this, you're writing from a place of knowledge, I think is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I was like I've been a vet for 10 years, like basically 10 years. Like I think I can say some stuff about it now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure you can. Well, I think on that note, we'll wrap things up, and maybe we'll follow up in the future based on any new articles and things like that. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and we will see everyone next time on What's Up Doc.